All right, Toothers, it's me again. For anybody who's listened to the previous episode, I'm thinking about the brain, which should be ironic or funny or punny at least, but you'll likely remember that I was kind of lost at the end. I thought I had a handle on what it was I was thinking about and what it was I was going to talk about, but no, as it turns out, I did not. And, I needed to work last night. I got to work again tonight, incidentally, but I started listening to one of my other audiobooks, which I didn't realize was going to be about the brain. I had gotten it because the summary that I had seen discussed the idea of, looking internally all the time isn't effective. I think they've had studies that shown it's not the kind of best way to improve yourself or whatever. But the explanation a little further in the book really suggests that you still have to look outside of yourself to see how you affect other people around you, which is also what I do. So initially I thought that, I don't know, I'm only maybe a quarter of the way through the book. It's an audio. It's like 8 hours of listening time. So, I'm a couple hours in, but the primary focus of the material is not what I thought. It seems to be about the kind of differences between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, and how the unconscious mind is likely more powerful, more prevalent in our, in our functioning and in how we figure things out. And it also seems that the unconscious itself is also highly adaptive. And he was talking about a study in it about they're playing a card game, and depending on the card decks chosen, certain cards would give you a better payout than the other deck. I was I'm a little sketchy on the details because I was working and only heard kind of part of it, but it did bring up an interesting idea to me that coincides with what I've been thinking about and what I'm reading about and what I'm talking about, which is still somewhat collectively, what makes you you, what's your identity, and the idea of the conscious and unconscious is interesting areas to explore as well. But the book was, also kind of reaffirming the notion of the brain operating different parts of the body, different parts of our whole mental structure, and how it's hard to pin down what makes you you. Like, what's a clear, simple, thorough definition of that? And again, what's the point? What am I driving at? I don't know. I think it's a fascinating topic. I think the idea that we just take certain things for granted, when from a much deeper physical standpoint, deeper biological standpoint, it's not that simple, right? It's not just this is how it is. It's not. It's demonstrably, that's a demonstrably incorrect state of being, right? To see it and just kind of brush it off. I mean, look, you're entitled to your opinion. You're entitled to not take any of what I'm saying as necessary for your day to day. And I may be just speaking slightly about some things, but the overall concept is still the same. And I think it's relevant in one of my broader points about how we're more complex than we seem. We're not easily categorized. We're not easily defined. I mean, we are who we are individually. Collectively, we're still people. We should still respect that. I think that's the only way that we're going to be able to thrive as any level of community. But we're also not the same as everybody else. And I think a lot about that. Well, I mean, a lot is a relative term, but I do think about that from time to time. There's a moment in the Watchmen, both the movie and in the original materials, where one of the characters is talking about, wanting to see miracles, wanting to see things that are like statistically a miracle. And the reality is that each one of us individually are statistically miracles. We're the only one of us who could have existed at this time, right? I mean, the odds of us specifically being born in the time we're born in and existing in the time we exist in is, statistically really, really small. I don't know the math, but if you consider the amount of time humans have been on the planet and the amount of humans that have existed on the planet, you're one in that many zeros, which I think is interesting. It's a statistical miracle. I don't consider it a supernatural miracle. Some people would, and if you do, I can't argue with the point, but what's the point? Yeah, so this idea about the unconscious, because look, we have our dreams, right? I think some of the simplest ways to kind of understand the unconscious, at least for me, and hopefully it's helpful for you all. I think we as adults probably have some conception of the unconscious, so I may be telling you something that you already know, but you think about dreams, and you think about having like a gut reaction. That's one of the things that he talks about in the book a lot right now is having that gut reaction. And, I know that there's been science, I'm just going to say generically science done on the gut biomes and how, depending on what you have going on in your gut can also help determine kind of how you react to things, how your brain works, how things function. We know people get hangry, right? They're hungry and they're pissed, or they're pissed because they're hungry, but so they're yelling at you about something that's irrelevant, but they're hungry, right? We are affected by the things that affect our bodies, and our brains pick up on that. And it picks up on it unconsciously. It's not something that we focus on, right? I think that's the other kind of big point that I keep coming back to, really, is the difference between being consciously aware and unconsciously aware. And, when we talk about how really unconsciously our brain has decided what's going to happen next, and then we aren't consciously aware of it until we're doing it. And whether that doing it means thinking about it, whether we are consciously thinking about it, whether we are talking and now we're hearing ourselves, right? Or whether we're moving something or talking with our hands or driving. I got to take a train. Whatever that is, we know that there's a gap in time from when the brain lights up and then we do something. So yeah, there's still, so look, from a neuropsychological, biological, scientific standpoint, as far as I know, which isn't to say that I know anything, I just know what I'm telling you. Are we then, it goes back to, what's pulling the strings? Is anything pulling the strings, right? So I know I brought up the homunculus before and the idea of a soul, right? So there was a time where I believed in a lot of threes in the evangelical movement, it seems. The Trinity, the triune God, and the triune body, right? Spirit, soul, and body. I forget the specific definitions from the differentiators, but I was thinking about a different way to kind of put it together, at least in my own brain. But, the body is the body. It's a physical mass of flesh and bone and tissue and nonsense that we carry ourselves around in. Spirit is, I don't know, the energy that binds us. Not like the force, but like the force, I don't know. And then the soul is probably what's pulling the strings and what's really us, right? What's really kind of us, especially when you talk about the afterlife. It's always talking about your soul and your spirit's left behind, like some sort of leftover energy, So, I don't believe in any of that. I definitely want to specify that. But it is interesting that scientifically we're at a point where we're still like, well, what's driving us in that direction? If it's really just the brain, this is where I'm at currently, right? It's just the brain reacting. You're born, You're born with a certain physiology and a certain genetic structure and a certain, you know, potential for growth. And then your brain takes in all these inputs, which there's another thing that you brought up actually about inputs. Our brain takes in so many millions of inputs per second, and we can consciously process 40 of those. And that's probably that may be the average. I was gonna say it's probably a stretch, but that's probably the average, right? 40. I mean, you think about it. I'm driving right now. I'm driving and I'm talking, and I'm paying more attention to the fact that I'm in my lane and that I'm rambling on, and I will pause. And you don't hear the pauses because they get edited out. But I will pause if something unusual is showing up, right? If there's a vehicle driving erratically, I mean, you may hear me talk about it. The braking the other day, that was, I mean, we were moving along fine, and then all of a sudden, this one car decided to stop, and it became a chain reaction of near misses, right? And I'm probably not as near a miss as it sounded. Just I hit the brake so hard that the truck responded in kind and detected the other vehicle in front of me. I was already stopping, but it decided it wanted to stop harder, which could have been a problem for me if the truck behind me didn't also stop. What was I talking about? Yeah, so, you know, but think about what it's like when you are driving. You're looking at the lines of the road, you're looking at road conditions, you're looking at oncoming traffic, looking at the traffic in front of you, you're watching signs, if you're looking at GPS, if you're messing with the radio. I mean, think about all those inputs, those thoughts in your own brain, right, that you're trying to focus on while you're driving, while you're propelling down the road at a, you know, near fatal speed. Then I got to take a drink of water. I got to make sure I put it back in my cup holder. We think about these things, but you ever notice how sometimes you go on autopilot, especially with someplace, someplace you're going, you're on autopilot, and you can just kind of meander in your own mind, and you're driving, and you have a certain amount of muscle memory to deal with the road, and you aren't too distracted. Right? You're still watching the road, but your brain is thinking about. I mean, you're more consciously aware of thinking about other things, while the unconscious part of your mind sort of takes over, right? And then a few minutes later, you realize that you are somewhere different. I don't know if anybody else has that. I've had that happen a bunch. I don't have it when I'm talking. I have it when I'm zoning out. That was the other thing, right? I thought he was going to say muscle memory in the book. He actually refers to it as in the zone. You know, when you look at how athletes will, I mean, it's an athletic term, right, being in the zone, but they kind of tune everything else out, right? You think about a basketball player tuning out all the noise of the crowd and the cheerleaders and the other team where possible, right? They have to do all that and perform at as best as they possibly can. Right? They have to ignore all these other things. I mean, that's part of the ability that people have to focus. Can you imagine having to take in all these inputs and not being able to focus? Your brain not allowing you to focus, it would make you dizzy, right? Permanently dizzy. So there is definitely a balance that your brain processes based around conscious and unconscious thought. I think it's fascinating aspect of being a higher functioning primate that I find interesting. I don't know if I got much else beyond that. That was my eyeball. I probably shouldn't have tried to rub it. What is bugging me? I gotta rub it. I gotta rub my eyeball. Do you need like an eyeball thing in the car so I can watch my eyeball out like at a chemical station? All right. What was you talking about? So anyway, that's what's been going on. I do want to get more into that book as far as the conscious and unconscious, and I think it's an interesting time, and I hope that I can bring you all along on this journey in a way that is sensible and understandable, and either makes you more interested or I don't know, I guess doesn't, but hopefully I can make it interesting or compelling enough to continue to grab your attention I will put information about the books somewhere at some point. Probably not right now, but I do know them, so I will put them out there. Maybe I'll do longer blog posts about stuff, but I just wanted you to be aware that that's where I'm at. All right, I think that's good for today. So hope everybody has a great rest of your whatever. Brush your teeth.